Jason Pomeroy grew up in New England, in a small town in central Maine. Like other American boys, baseball, Nintendo games, rock concerts, and TV filled his life, along with school activities, community service, and summer jobs. Also, like many young people of his time, Jason had to deal with the problems of disobedience, alcohol, and drugs. While in college, Jason became interested in martial arts and Eastern philosophy. During the summer of 1998, just before entering his senior year, he came across a flyer advertising a free seminar for Falun Dafa, also called Falun Gong, a spiritual self-improvement system that originated in China. This caught his interest, so he went to check it out. Little did he know at the time that this moment would lead to a big turning point in his life and in his family's as well.
When I first came to learn, my first impression was it was something very special. It was also just what I had been looking for, and it was very real.
The seminar ran for 9 days. Although many of the terms and concepts were foreign to Jason, and he had many questions, he felt that this was something different from anything he'd heard before. He noticed that whenever he went home with a question, it was usually answered in the next day's lecture. This kept him returning for the entire 9 days. By the end of the seminar, Jason knew he had come across something very precious. He decided to start practicing Falun Dafa.
First thing I did was concentrate on doing my job well. And at the time, since I was a student, I decided I should, study well. So I just concentrated on being a good student. I would usually sleep in until the last, moment before my classes. I never made breakfast. I don't think most of my friends did. But after I started to practice, I started to wake up very early in the morning. So every morning I would go before class. I would come back, eat breakfast, go to class, and have energy all day long. So, that combined with having really clear direction, really positive direction, definitely made me more and more confident in the practice.
Jason started to improve himself according to the principles of Falun Dafa: truthfulness, benevolence, and forbearance. When he went home during a school break, his family noticed the change.
As I noticed in Jason, he was more respectful with my parents. He cut his hair. Well, I don't want to offend people with long hair, but before I practiced, for a couple years, had been kind of looking for I was just trying to improve myself, but I was following, some path I didn't think was for me, and I didn't have good direction. And one of the things I decided to do was let my hair grow longer, just simply for the reason why not? And I also didn't quite wash it that well, so it was kind of knotted and messy. And for me, it was fine. And for me, the way I dressed and smelled and everything was fine with me. But, to my family and stuff, it was kind of disturbing.
Well, he had the hair. It wasn't just his hair. It was, he had grown a little bit of fuzz on his chin as well. It was real scraggly looking.
Jason decided to cut his hair after practicing Falun Gong for only a few weeks.
He came home and it was short, and he looked back to normal like he used to. And it just his whole continence about how to conduct himself changed.
After about a month of practice, Jason experienced great benefits. He saw his own improvements. So he decided to share what he'd learned with his family. Coincidentally, his mother called him one weekend and expressed her concern for his brother, Daniel, who had fallen ill.
She sounded, sincerely concerned for his well-being. I guess he had come down with really physically sick, and she was concerned he had Lyme disease, and he also, his mood hadn't been very positive previous to the, prior to that time period. So this was just another added thing. And she wanted me to maybe come home, or she wanted my advice what to do. So at that point I realized, that the best thing I could do for him would be, to send him a copy of Zhuanfalan.
A couple of weeks later, Daniel called Jason and wanted to talk more about the book, 转法轮, and about Falun Gong.
He was very excited, and he wanted me to teach him the exercises. Then I took the next possible opportunity to go home, bring him the exercise tape, and teach him the first and second exercises.
I think as I began the practice, I began to understand deeper truths about what life is, what is the purpose of life. In Falun Gong, it says the purpose of life is to return to one's true self, which is innately truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So when I began to look at things in that light, my interests about what I wanted to do for hobbies, or what I would say, or how I'd act towards people changed.
Daniel's whole persona changed. He's the way even his posture, the way he carries himself is so different.
I used to party a lot and drink a lot, and got involved in doing some drugs. And for a couple of years that had been going on. So as I began to practice, my interests changed. I began to think about things about like life. What is life about? Not just having fun and like indulging certain things, desires. Over the course of a couple of months, those things kind of faded away.
I have to say that there was a change in Jason, but I noticed more of a drastic change in Daniel. He didn't seem like the kid with an attitude and cocky, almost arrogant, sassy maybe. Not anymore. Very patient, so calm, and he doesn't get riled about things. He seems to have patience of a saint.
Daniel had developed a wild reputation during his early years in high school. But when he returned to school as a senior, his teachers were amazed at the changes they saw in him.
The change that I noticed in you from that year to the next year when you came into my class after you had begun the practice, which I wasn't aware of, a very mature, kind, compassionate young man came into my classroom that year, and you were very selfless. You didn't care as much about yourself as you did for other people. And it just continued to grow. I noticed the kindness. It was just so evident. And then the next year, it had even grown. It's like it's mushrooming.
A few of the captains would ask me, if I have a problem, should I go to you or should I go to Dan? And they really looked up to Dan.
I started substitute teaching at the school that he was going to, and also driving the school bus there. And the teachers, once they found out that he was my nephew, they would all come up to me and say, "My God, what a difference in this kid! What a big change! He is such a pleasure to have. He's so helpful. He gives incentive to the other kids to better themselves." And they were just amazed. They could not believe the transformation in this kid.
Well, I really saw a change in Daniel because Jason was not home, but it was Daniel. It was a big change in him. And I think I noticed it when instead of answering back, especially with his father, lose his temper with his father, he was really calm. Or if Michael got upset, he'd say, "Dad, why are you yelling? Or why are you getting mad?" And I was like, "Wow," and he just. So that's when I took notice to, boy, this, that he's changing.